and the Bakongos, two different tribes struggling for power in the Congo. Then, of course, Liberia, there's a peace agreement now between forces of Charles Taylor and those of the interim government, Amos Sawyer, that's still holding at this particular time. Nobody knows what will happen in the future. Then, of course, Malawi, where you have long-time President Hastings Kamuzu Banda, who's been there since independence. Of course, he's almost 90 years old. Just had a brain surgery a few months ago, but still clinging to power. Of course, Banda was educated here in Nashville at Mehari Medical College. Then you have Sierra Leone, of course. Rebels are trying to overthrow the government of President Valentine Strasser, who came to power a few years ago. Then, of course, the good news in South Africa, Mandela has been proclaimed president, by the legislature in Cape Town. Tomorrow he gets sworn in as president of South Africa. And then, of course, the bad news, Rwanda and Burundi. We are fighting, it's still going on.
And looking at all of those difficult spots in Africa, Dr. Madu, let's have you to talk about Rwanda this morning and to give our audience some idea in terms of how we might be able to reach a solution, or perhaps if there is anything the outside world might be able to do in order to help to end some of the violence that's going on in that small country.
Well, you cannot talk about Rwanda without talking about Burundi. The situation in both countries are intertwined. Of course, you have the Hutus and also the Tutsis. In both countries, the Hutus are in majority, about 85 to 15, ratio. The Hutus 85, the Tutsis are 15.
But these are two tribes, two different ethnic.
Two different tribes, but they speak the same language. It was formerly a Belgian colony, that was handed over to Belgium after the First World War when Germany was defeated. So until 1962, when it became independent. But like all colonial masters, the kind of games they played in Africa was divide and rule. The Belgians favored the Tutsis to using the Tutsis as a counterbalance to keep the Hutus in check.
Now, the Tutsis represented the smallest of the two groups?
Precisely, yes, just 15%, in both countries. So what happened was that before independence in 1962, in 1959, there was a rebellion by the Hutus in Rwanda.
Majority?
Yes, they slaughtered a lot of Tutsis and they took power by force. In Burundi, the Belgians handed over power to the Tutsis and the Tutsis kept power in Burundi. So since then there has been a lot of problems. In Burundi in 1972, over 500,000 Hutus were slaughtered by the president who was in power at that time, who happens to be Tutsi, Mikombero. The Hutus rose up in rebellion and he sent the Tutsi-dominated army to slaughter as many as Hutus as they could get. In fact, the cream of the Hutu intellectual elite was eliminated in 1972, causing over 500,000 Hutus to flee into Tanzania. In Rwanda, the Hutus kept power, until what started in 1990 as a rebellion. What has been happening in both countries is that in 1966, the ruler of Burundi was a man called Mwami Mwambusa. The Mwami is king, King Mwambusa. He was overthrown by his son, when he was on a foreign trip. His 80-year-old son at that time called Prince Charles Ndinzeye. He made himself king in Tare and appointed Captain Michel Mikombero as prime minister. Now he left to visit Zaire himself and was overthrown by Captain Mikombero, who made himself president and asked him to come back, on a guarantee of safety. Mobutu acceded to that, and Tare came back and was killed. And the Hutus went on a rampage, slaughtering, the Hutus as usual. Last year, how things came to a head now. Last year in October, that was the first time, really, in June last year was the first time the Hutus ever took control of the Burundian government. There was a free and fair election in which a guy called Melchior Ndadaye, became the first democratically elected president In Burundi, of course, he was a Hutu, the first Hutu to be president. In October last year, he was overthrown and assassinated. In fact, he was in his palace when the Tutsi army attacked, captured him and took him to the barracks, removed his watch, emptied his pocket, and stabbed him to death. And before they killed him, he told them, he said, look, be careful what you're about to do. It is very, very dangerous. This happened on a Wednesday. Early morning Thursday, the Hutus went on a rampage, started slaughtering Tutsis all over. In fact, this is the first time in Burundian history that Tutsis have been at the receiving end. Over 100,000 were killed. You know. Then somebody else called Cyprien Ntayamira, who is a member of the Hutu elite, succeeded him. Mind you that when this coup was going on and all these killings, thousands of Hutus started running to Rwanda. So the more Hutus ran to Rwanda, tensions in the Rwandan government started building. That here they are kings running over here, and they started getting agitated. In 1990, a group of Tutsis who were in Uganda invaded Rwanda. The funny thing about this is that these particular Tutsis were members of the Ugandan army. The president of Uganda, a man called Yoweri Museveni, who himself overthrew the military government by guerrilla warfare, has used these Hutus amongst his army to come to power. So he has promised them that when he became president, he was going to unleash them, send them back to Rwanda as an army. The first commander of the Tutsi army was a commander of Ugandan army, General Guema. And the current commander now of that Tutsi rebels in Rwanda now was also the chief of the Ugandan military intelligence, General Paul Kagame. So Museveni really is the prime supplier of arms to the Tutsis. What an irony, to destabilize Rwanda when Uganda itself is recovering. Okay, so in 1990, the Tutsi rebels, with the aid of Museveni, invaded the country. There was a ceasefire last year brokered by the OAU and the United Nations, okay, asking the president at that time, called Juvenal Habyarimana, to appoint Tutsis to his cabinet. Well, he was willing to do that. That was why he flew to Tanzania, okay. With Cyprien Ntayamira, the president of Rwanda, to talk with Ali Hassan Mwinyi, who is the president of Tanzania. Now, on his way back with Ntayamira, their plane, was shot down. There has been speculations on who did this. Some say, well, it was the Rwandan rebels. Now, some investigation, of course, coming from the Belgians who support the Tutsis, nobody's very sure, claimed that the plane was shot down by the Hutu presidential guard, who did not want Habyarimana to negotiate and bring Hutus into the government. So as soon as this happened, this gave a pretext to the hardliners in the presidential guard to go on and carry out the final solution. In fact, up to now, over 200,000 people have been slaughtered in that country.
In all of this, Dr. Madu, it's nothing but atrocities that are being committed not only in Africa but in Europe and everywhere you look today. And while all of that information sort of gives us a thread, and it leads to another